So, as Charlie just said, we are focusing on community this month, the fall focus. So I just want to quickly read what Charlie had. Relationship is the highest value of the kingdom. Jesus said the greatest commandment is loving God and each other, Matthew 22:37. God lives in the perfect relationship of Father, Son, and Holy Spirit and invites us all into the union. This month of October, Abiding Place is going to focus on how do we grow into and experience the best relationships possible and in every area of our lives. This includes brothers and sisters in faith, friends, family, strangers, and people in authority in our lives. Learning to live in healthy relationship is the greatest predictor of success spiritually, professionally, and personally. So, when I knew this was the fall focus, I was really excited because I feel like truly God's been speaking to me about community for the past year. So I was like, yes, I have a message. So this message is specifically for Abiding Places community, but of course the themes and things can be transferred to other spheres of influence and other communities in your life. The 4 words I want you guys to remember, if you get nothing else out of it: vulnerability, curiosity, community, and compassion. And I'm going to be quizzing you as we go along. So I want vocal input. Okay, vulnerability. Say it with me. Vulnerability. Curiosity. Community. Compassion. Those are 4 very important words. To address what a healthy community looks like, we have to address what a healthy individual looks like, because what is a community but a group of individuals, right? So we have to be vulnerable first with ourselves so we can be vulnerable with others. Miko and I love to have discussions, as many of you may know, and especially early on in our relationship, we would be having an argument, a discussion, and I would be so sure of my point of view, and he would be so sure of his. And we'd be going along, and he would say something new. He would present new evidence that would cause me to be like, oh, to reassess my stance. Oh, you know what? That is contradicting with what I was feeling. And in that moment, I had the choice of either pivoting and saying, oh, I'm so sorry. You know, you said that piece of evidence, that changes my mind. I could have done that, but what I most often would do is I would pivot. Oh, you said it incorrectly. You didn't say it right to me. Oh, well, now I don't care about that thing I was arguing anymore. I'm going to argue something else. I would pivot. That wasn't being vulnerable with myself. When I received that new information, that's an opportunity to pivot and change. And so that's where we can start to be vulnerable with ourselves. Another example is, in the 50s and early 60s, smoking was considered a healthy habit. It's something that everyone should do. Why aren't you doing it too? It's healthy, it's good for you. It's cool. Yeah, you look really cool smoking. And obviously when we got more information, it was okay to pivot. Oh, that's actually wrecking my lungs. Maybe I should stop doing that. We have to be able to look at ourselves with a sober lens and really see ourselves for where the shortcomings that we have. And it's not a bad thing to see our shortcomings. If we don't see our shortcomings, there's no place for us to go. If we don't know where we're starting from, you can't go anywhere. We have to be not afraid to admit when we're wrong. That's another thing I don't like to do. I like to be right. I don't like to be told that I'm wrong. I will fight when you tell me I'm wrong. Oh, actually, no, I meant to do it that way. No. Our brains are incredible things. I majored in psychology, so I love the brain and how we think and the processes. I think it's very fascinating. I actually just came across some old psychology notes, and as I was reading it, I was like, that's it. So our brains and what we think live up here, right? And then because of what we think, we speak it. When we speak it, that message comes back into our brains. We're hearing it, and it's coming back into our brains, which comes down into our heart, and we internalize that message. And it just reinforces what we were thinking. So once we have it in our heart, where does it go? Right back to our brain, which then comes out of our mouth. It's a cycle. And when you see that cycle, it can feel like, how do I hop and how do I break that cycle? It's actually really easy. You just have to catch it. You just have to, you have to be aware, and this goes with the self-awareness, you have to be aware of what's coming in, because what comes in, comes out, goes back in, and lives in us. What we say and what we do matters. It matters. Proverbs 18:21 says, "The tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit." What we say literally brings life or death. It's really imperative, I feel like in this season, but in general, obviously, just to be so aware of what we are saying and what we're doing, because it matters. It has direct implications not only to ourselves, but to others. Proverbs 18:6-7 says, "A fool's lips bring him strife, and his mouth invites a beating. A fool's mouth is his undoing, and his lips are a snare to his soul." I mean, I don't know that it can get any more, direct than that. But it's so important that we're aware and that we become aware of what's coming out of our mouths. We have to practice letting whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, which is in Philippians 4:8, into our hearts and minds. Whatever you have your mind set on, we become. I said I was never going to sing and preach in the same thing, and here I did it, and I'll just be drinking a lot here. So one of my jobs I've been doing this fall is cleaning the attic. It's kind of been a mess since we moved in 4 years ago, and with each season, I want different decor out, so then, I get it out from the attic, and it's just been a jumble of a mess, and, the kids are growing, blah, blah, blah. So I'm going through, and I found my big box of old yearbooks, mementos, things that I was reading and into in high school, early 20s. So it was kind of fun to see what was I into? What were my interests? And I came across this book that I totally forgot about, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens. Have you guys heard of this book? Yeah. I forgot that. That's a good book. And so I said, oh yeah, I remember being impacted by this so many years ago. And so I started reading it, and I was freaking out. It's so good. So one of the first pages, it has a diagram of a tree. So picture a tree with the roots, the trunk and the leaves, okay? So the habits begin with number 1 at the roots, okay? So picture it with me. Habit 1 is be proactive. Take responsibility for your life. A little bit further up in the roots, begin with the end in mind. Define your mission and goals in life. Still in the roots, but at the top of the roots is habit 3. Put first things first. Prioritize and do the most important things first. And then we move to the trunk, habit 4. Think win-win. Have an everyone can win attitude. That's a good one, right? A little higher up, habit 5. Seek first to understand and then to be understood. Listen to people sincerely. At the highest part of the trunk is habit 6. Synergize. Work together to achieve more. Habit 7, at the leaves of the tree, the top of the tree, is sharpen the saw. Renew yourself regularly. I thought that was so good. And then it goes on to say, the habits build upon each other. Habits 1, 2, 3 down in the trunk deal with self-mastery. We call it the private victory. Habits 4, 5, and 6 in the trunk there deal with relationships and teamwork. We call it the public victory. You've got to get your personal act together before you can be a good team player. That's why the private victory comes before the public victory. The last habit, habit 7, is the habit of renewal. It feeds all the other 6 habits. I thought this was so impactful and so practical. I don't care if it was intended for teenagers or not, it's applicable to everybody. This is how we become valuable members of a community and of this community. We've got to take care of ourselves before we can pour into others effectively. We've got to pour into ourselves effectively. Let the Lord pour into ourselves. Our behaviors directly impact our community. So we need vulnerability, right? Say it with me, vulnerability, a sober lens, and compassion for ourselves. True healthy community requires vulnerability. Yeah, there you go. All right. Okay, 1 Corinthians 12 through 27. If you want to follow along, I'm going to take a drink of water. For even as the body is one, and yet has many members, and all the members of the body, though they are many, are one body, so also is Christ. For by one Spirit we were all baptized into one body, whether Jews or Greeks, whether slaves or free, and we were all made to drink of one Spirit. For the body is not one member, but many. If the foot says, because I'm not a hand, I am not a part of the body, it is not for this reason any the less a part of the body. And if the ear says, because I'm not an eye, I am not a part of the body, it is not for this reason any the less a part of the body. I'm channeling my 5-year-old. If the whole body were an eye, where would the hearing be? If the whole were hearing, where would the sense of smell be? But now God has placed the members, each one of them, in the body just as he desired. If they were all one member, where would the body be? But now there are many members, but one body. And the eye cannot say to the hand, I have no need of you. Or again, the head to the feet, I have no need of you. On the contrary, it is much truer that the members of the body, which seem to be weaker, are necessary, and those members of the body which we deem less honorable, on those we bestow more abundant honor, and our less presentable members become much more presentable, whereas our more presentable members have no need of it. But God has so composed the body, giving more abundant honor to that member which lacked, so that there may be no division in the body, but that the members may have the same care for one another. And if one member suffers, all the members suffer with it. If one member is honored, all the members rejoice with it. Now you are Christ's bodies, and individually members of it. I love those verses because it kind of puts everything into perspective. I love how it addresses both the individual and the whole, and how each part is important. You can't have one without the other. Some of you may remember in 2013, my beautiful husband went on a hike with Travis Adams and a couple friends, and they decided to go off the trail. I was away. I couldn't talk sense into them. I didn't know what they were doing. And they went off the trail, and Miko slipped down and dislocated his ankle. What else did you break? Your tibia. Okay. So his leg was all jacked up. That's a great memory, right? No, that was a terrible time. We had no insurance. No, it all worked out. But the point that I'm trying to say is the other non-broken bones weren't saying, hey, like his other knee isn't saying, oh, hey, I'm a little bruised. Did you notice my pain? Like I got bumped around. And like his shoulder isn't saying like, hey, you see me? I have no pain. Hey, do you see me? No pain. No, all of his body went into shock and is like, my ankle is pointing a different direction. My attention, my whole body is going to help this part of the body that's jacked up. And so often, I'm going to say in this community and in my life, I've seen so many people, when someone's in pain, showing true pain, you have someone else coming and saying, oh, I have pain too. It's not related to this pain. It's totally different, but it's not, not related at all. But I have pain too. Can you please pay attention to me? I've also seen people that say hey, I have no pain. I have no pain, which is not helpful. We can celebrate. We celebrate with others. What's the verse say? Let me read it here. And if one member suffers, all the members suffer with it. If one member is honored, all the members rejoice with it. It's not a competition. In fact, it's the antithesis of competition. Community is the antithesis of competition. Proverbs 18:4 says, the words of a man's mouth are deep waters, but the fountain of wisdom is a bubbling brook. Has anyone's mouth got you in some deep waters? Yeah. It's not hard to do. It doesn't take many words to make deep waters. What do you do if you're in deep waters and can't swim? You dialogue. You reach out to your community. You ask for help. You be vulnerable with others. Yes. You get a gold star. Most self problems can be solved with two things. It's not vulnerability this time, though it can be, but I feel like most self problems can be solved with curiosity and community. We need to be curious about how we're feeling and come to it without judgment, because that's what stops us so many times. We feel angry or upset or offended. We just take it for what it is and just move on. Oh, I'm offended. Forget them. That does nothing. It just buries the problem, actually. It'll come back for you later. God told me, you can, what is it? Maybe I shouldn't have said that. I know. I wrote it down somewhere. It's something like, you can try to outlast your problems, but your problems will always outlast you until you deal with it. They'll always come back, just like birthing pains. It's like you go through a contraction. Those of you that have had babies, you go through a contraction, and you're like, yeah, it's not done till it's done. It's not done till it's done. It'll come back until that problem, the baby, is dealt with. To grow requires change. We often don't like to change, but it's necessary. It's inevitable. We'll change even if we're not trying to change. And that's very, passive. And we end up just, it brings more harm to us when we're passive, trying to resist change. So, what pulls us from community at Abiding Place? Probably vulnerability, I would guess. But I wanted to also share another story. Miko and we were at a family event several years ago when I was young. And I was upset about how he did something in the event. And so, we got into the car at the end of the night, and I'm like, you were so rude. You did this. This was awful. Didn't you see what you did? And, obviously he had a totally different perspective. Well, I did this, and you didn't see this, and this was where I was coming from. I asked them. I was fine, And I came into that so self-righteous and sure. I remember that night. I was so sure of my position. And he was saying things, just like I said earlier, he was giving me new evidence that if I was in my right mind, if I was soft, I would have heard that new evidence and said, oh, I could pivot. I am so sorry. I didn't see that right. That I got that totally wrong. Do you forgive me? I did not pivot this night. I went to another tactic, which was, okay, if I can just get him to do something worse, or I'm going to poke the bear, I'm going to get him to do something that I'll feel doubly justified, like I'm poking the bear. And sure enough, something. And so I remember sitting in that passenger seat, like, real happy with myself, like, ha, I know I was wrong, but now I don't have to say anything. Problem solved. And in that moment, I'll never forget it. The Lord, literally, he goes, your actions are not righteous, holy, or noble. I switched that. Let me switch it. My actions are not righteous, noble, or holy if they are solely in contrast to others' worst behavior. And in that moment, it was like a gut check. I was so mad because I knew it was so right. But so often, and this goes back to what I'm feeling in this community at Abiding Place, that I feel like we've had this frame of mind where, I'll say it again, my actions are not righteous, noble, or holy if they are solely in contrast to worst behavior. We're not in a competition to see, like, if Billy over here does something, like, oh, at least I'm not doing I'm not sleeping around like Billy. I'm not drinking and driving like Billy. It doesn't matter what he's doing. He's got to answer to Jesus for himself. Just like we have to answer to Jesus for ourselves. He's the measurement that we're looking at, not each other. My actions are not righteous, noble, or holy if they are solely in contrast to others' worst behavior. Sure. In this community, we need to be vulnerable. We need to have curiosity and compassion. Community is in our core. It's how we're wired, both as individuals and in this community. I feel like specifically in Abiding Place, community is in our core. Community cares. Community celebrates. Community catches. Also, community isn't always comfortable. What happens if we walk outside of community? It's not good. I truly feel our call diminishes. Whatever the Lord has called in our life, I can't think of one example where, the Lord will say, only here, just you and only you go and reach the nations. You can't do that alone. You need people, you need connections, you need people that you can be real with and that can help you up. My dad just had his 72nd birthday. We went and celebrated a couple weeks ago, and my mom's so cute. She had little 3x5 cards with like questions for us to ask Dad, like, tell us about the house fire and tell us about, so basically, you reach in the basket and come to Dad and, he'll tell you a story, which I did appreciate. But one that was really interesting was like, for backstory, my mom is white, my dad is black. So on one of the cards, it said, ask Dad about a time that you encountered racism, I believe. And so it actually jump-started this big conversation. And my brother goes, I've never asked about, like, how did my mom's mom, so the white side of my family, how did they react when Dad came around? Like, what happened? Because, the family that we knew growing up was everyone just loved and accepted. Like, we didn't know any different, really, for the most part. And so my mom told a story about when they got engaged, and that's when all the side of the family was like, oh, no, you will not marry this man, and you will certainly not have any children with this man. Yeah. And I never knew that. Like, she was calling out family members. I'm like, oh, they said that? Oh, is that why we don't see them so much? And what really stood out to me is probably the family that we were closest with was my mom's aunt and uncle, Aunt Beth and Uncle Ansel. They were missionaries in China for many years, but they took them aside and said, don't listen to them. We have your back. You guys are in love, get married. We have your back. Don't listen to what they're saying. We have your back. And I mean, if you knew these people, they were solid people and really influential in my life. But in any case, that just spoke so deeply to me, this need for community. When you're going through something hard, you can't do it alone, not healthy and not well. You can maybe muddle along and come out like dragging your legs and crawling to the finish line, but who wants to live like that? That's not what we're called to do. That's not how we're called to live. So how can we foster community and relationships with others? How do we make this our reality? Guys, ready? Vulnerability and compassion and curiosity. It's never a bad time to hop in the stream and lean in. It's never too late to step into greater community. Proverbs 27:17 says, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. That's what we're called to do. We make each other better. We're great on our own, but we're better with others. I love there's an African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So I have a homework assignment for you guys. Yeah, I know Dana's really excited. I want you guys to ask God to highlight one person in this community. And it can't be someone you've had dinner with. It can't be someone that you know that's already in your community. In your micro community. An abiding place, yes. Ask the Lord how you can speak into their lives this week, a way that you can send a text message encouraging them, bring over, you know that they've had surgery, bring over a meal. No one's had a baby, I can't use that example, but bring flowers. Whatever the Lord puts on your heart, I encourage you this week to reach out to one person, or more if you want. Extra credit. So, yeah. Okay. Community. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Yeah, sure. Let
me just tag up. Let me hobble up. Whose wife is that? Whose wife is that? Oh my goodness. I'm going to brag on you. My wife frequently says that when I speak, she falls in love with me all over again. And I just experienced that. It's amazing. I love that. I also know the terror of being the example and not knowing what you're going to say. So I apologize for every time I've done that to you. That's right. As you're speaking, that's such a great message, and I love the homework. But I also feel like there's a part in what you said about personal responsibility. And I just feel so strongly there's a grace right now for that personal responsibility, because it is something we can do. It's one of those things as Christians that is simple. It's not easy necessarily, but it's simple. We take every thought captive. And I love what you said. We give ourselves grace. So often I'll go, that was a bad thought. I'm okay. I took it captive. That was a bad thought. I acknowledge to God, that wasn't very noble. And then I go, thank you for your forgiveness. And I let it go. And that's part of what you're talking about, that personal responsibility. I caught it. I held it captive. I released it. And I didn't beat myself up over it. I didn't say, oh, I'm such a bad person. How could I even think that? I frequently say I'm not a nice person, but I got saved. Because I understand sometimes I don't always have the best impulses. But God's grace covers me, and he gives me the ability to be righteous. And so I feel like there's a grace that you released with that message for stepping into the personal victory, the personal responsibility. So if you would like to receive that grace, I just want to invite you to stand up and just hold out your hand in the posture of receiving. Father, I just thank you so much that you love us. You love us where we are, but you love us too much to leave us there. And I thank you that you don't just take control, but you teach us personal responsibility by letting us drive sometimes, by leading us, Lord, and letting us make choices. And I just pray that right now we would feel your presence. We would feel that hand on our shoulder, that guidance, and we'd feel the grace to hold every thought captive, to start claiming personal victories, to start building healthy habits. Because you ask us to partner with you, and you don't just say, come follow me. You actually give us the ability and the grace to do it, and we thank you for that, and we receive that grace today to step into the personal victories you've prepared for us. In Jesus' name, amen.
All right. Have a wonderful Sunday.